Hi, everybody. This is MoCo's Most Famous. I am Joe Yasharoff, the host and Director of Content at Montgomery Community Media in Rockville. Today's special guest, very special guest, is Tim Kurkjian. Tim, I'm sure your name has never been misspelled or mispronounced. We're going to get into that later. Tim is one of the great baseball writers, analysts out there today, and he is being honored with a very special award in Cooperstown, actually this weekend, and we're going to talk about that. Tim is a Walter Johnson High School grad in Bethesda, went to the University of Maryland, has written for the Dallas Morning News, the Baltimore Sun. I'm trying to remember all these, Tim. Sports Illustrated, has been with ESPN, I think, almost 25 years now. He's written a couple of books, won a couple of Emmys. He does it all. And again, he's one of the best. And Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're on the cusp here of you being honored with this very special Lifetime Achievement Award at Cooperstown, at the Baseball Hall of Fame. How does it feel now as you're now real close to actually getting this award?
Well, I'm scared to death. I've never been this nervous in my entire life.
Wow.
Hall of Fame is such a special place, especially to someone like me who loves baseball this much. I won this award on December the 7th, and it's just been an overwhelming, overpowering experience every day since then. And this is the crescendo this weekend. I'm walking around the Otesaga Hotel. Johnny Bench came up and gave me a hug this morning. I mean, this is what it's like. It's unbelievable. I keep telling myself, this can't be happening to you. And yet, apparently it is. And I can't even begin to tell you how honored and thrilled I am. And I just hope I get through this weekend in one piece, because to repeat, I am so nervous. I just can't mess this up. And I hope I don't.
So, Tim, I know this is not an enshrinement and induction like the players and other contributors get, but you'll still be in that building, in that museum, with the likes of Babe Ruth and all of the greats who have ever played the game. So how humbling is that, that your name will be there with the great players of all time?
Well, it's beyond humbling, but I need to make this clear. I'm not in that club. I'm not one of them. There is an area to recognize the greatest broadcasters and the best writers, and I'm in that group, and that is plenty. To be on the same group, same list as Shirley Povich and Rick Hummel and, so many others, Roger Angel, and my dear friends, Dan Shaughnessy of the Boston Globe, who was my mentor, taught me how to do this job. Peter Gammons, who I believe is the greatest baseball writer of all time, who taught all of us how to do this job. And Jason Stark, who taught me so well how to look for and define great notes and stats. To be on the same team, to be on the same list with those guys, that's the biggest thrill that I've ever had.
And you're at heart, you're a writer, I think you would agree, but you were a great writer, and then you've made a transition into a great TV person. How hard was that transition, and are you proud of the fact that you were able, they're two distinctly different things. Both involve information, but they're very different. Are you proud of the fact that you made that successfully, that transition successfully?
Yes, I'm very proud, because it was really difficult. I had to spend a fortune on new clothes. I wear more makeup than my wife, and I spend a lot of time walking around in a circle talking to myself. That's kind of what you have to do television. But fortunately, my baseball writer, beat writer days, which I did for 10 years, taught me how to do television. It taught me how to get a story. It taught me how to write. It taught me how to write quickly. It taught me how to write on deadline. It taught me how to identify where the story is. And TV is just a different medium. You just have to present the information in a different way, but it's the same idea. Yeah. And that made it so much better. So everything that I do on television, the radio, anything is all because of the way that I started as a writer at a newspaper. That taught me every lesson I needed to learn. And even though it took me a long time to figure out how to do TV efficiently and well, it was all from my writing background experience that made me be able to do this.
In your hours in the hotel, Tim, I'm sure you've had a lot of time to think about this, and before you got to Cooperstown this week, are you spending a lot of time hearkening back to the early days and just how it started and your career through the years?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and I just find it really, really cool that it all started in Montgomery County, started at Walter Johnson High School, named after the greatest pitcher of all time. There has to be some destiny involved there that a dinky little guy like me went to Walter Johnson and ended up making a career out of baseball. And I worked for the school paper there. It was called The Pitch. I did some work for the yearbook. It was called The Windup. And I was a really bad writer in high school. And after one especially bad story, one of my gym teachers told me, Tim, that might be the worst story I've ever read in the school paper. I hope you're not planning on making this your life's work. And yet somehow, miraculously, I did. So that's where it all started, as a writer at The Pitch at Walter Johnson High School. And then I just kept writing and writing and writing. And if you want to be a good free throw shooter, you got to shoot a lot of free throws. If you want to be a good shortstop, you got to take a lot of ground balls. If you want to be a good writer, you're going to have to write an awful lot. So eventually I figured out how to write, and I've been doing it for 42 years on the major league level. And it has been a great 42 years, and I hope I have many more years to come.
Like some of the greatest athletes, Michael Jordan being the one that comes to mind, using real slights, imagined slights, and even made up slights. Did you use those words to motivate you? And do you still think back and use that to motivate you and say, hey, I showed you?
Well, I don't really operate that way. Michael Jordan and I are on a different competitive level. He's on a different competitive level than anyone. But sure, it told me, wow, if I wrote a really bad story and I'm in high school, I better get a whole lot better from here. The other moment that was really important, kind of an epiphany I had, was in 1982. I was covering the Texas Rangers, and they were terrible, but I'm the beat writer for the Dallas Morning News. I've got this tremendous job, but the Rangers had lost 11 games in a row in May. And I staggered into manager Don Zimmer's office with a haggard look on my face. And he said, what's wrong with you? And I said, Zim, I must tell you, covering this team hasn't been nearly as much fun as I thought it would be. And then he looked at me, and I'm quoting here. He said, quit complaining. Look at yourself. You're young, you're good looking, you got your whole life in front of you. He said, look at me. I'm old, I'm fat, I'm bald, I'm ugly. I got a plate in my head, and I got this team to manage. I'm the one with all the worries. So quit complaining and recognize how fortunate you are to be covering Major League Baseball every day. And Zim, as always, was right. It was a privilege to cover the game 40 years ago, and 40 years later, it is still a privilege, because baseball is the best game. It's the greatest game of all time.
Sounds like you've had a lot of good lessons along the way, and you know the important thing about lessons is actually learning from them. And it sounds like you did. So now you covered the Orioles. Now you covered them in the 80s.
I covered them twice. I covered them in 80, 81 as a backup at the Washington Star, but then I went to the Baltimore Sun in 86 and covered them for 4 years for the Sun. And they were pretty bad when I was there, except for 89. But again, lessons were learned.
So now, they've gone through a lot of down years. Obviously, they had to, unload some stars and superstars like Machado and others. Are you surprised, shocked, stunned by what they've done so far this year? I know that it's a 162 game schedule, but are you surprised by what they've done so far this year?
Yeah, I'm shocked, but this is why baseball is the greatest game, because it's so unpredictable. Just when you think you understand what you're watching, you realize that you don't. The game won't allow you to do that. Last year, the Orioles finished 39 games out of fourth place in their division. It's only the second time in history any team has finished that far behind the next worst team in their league or division. And now they got over 500. Now they're in a pennant race. It's an absolute miracle. But that's why baseball is so great, is that nobody saw this coming. I have slapped my forehead a dozen times in the last 2 weeks about the Orioles, and that's what makes it so good. It's just when you think you get it, you realize baseball won't allow you to figure it out.
and they're playing in the toughest division by far in baseball, which makes it even more incredible. Okay, so at ESPN, you have a special on-air relationship with Scott Van Pelt, another Montgomery County guy. How did that start? And are you guys having as much fun as it looks like you are?
Yeah, we are. You know, Joe, there's a few people in your life who are going to make you laugh no matter what they say because they're hysterically funny, and that's Scott Van Pelt. But we both grew up in Montgomery County. He went to Sherwood, I went to WJ. So we both grew up about 50 miles from Baltimore. And I love it, but the people there have a completely different accent than the people from Montgomery County. And it's a beautiful accent. And Scott is the master, of course, of all accents, dialects. He can impersonate virtually anybody. And his Baltimore accent is just the funniest thing I've ever heard. So he did it on the air with his radio show once, just dropped it on me, and I laughed spontaneously and uproariously because it's hysterically funny when he talks about Kike Garcia with the long O or whatever it is. So that was about 15 years ago, and he's been doing that to me ever since. And I just can't help it. When he drops Leo Mazzoni on me or Joe Flacco, look, I can't do it like he can, but it's so funny. And Joe, the lesson is, look, we're covering sports for a living, okay? It's okay to have a good hearty laugh once in a while. We need more of that in sports. We need more of that in the world. So I'm not apologizing to anybody for having a good chuckle with Scott Van Pelt once in a while because we're from the same county and we share the same philosophy on sports. We love it. We just love going to the games. We just love talking about the games. And that's why we get along so well.
How about that news, hon? I can't do it like SVP, but I just have to say that. So thank you for listening. Okay, so as we wrap up here, we're going to go in the Wayback Machine. So I'm now interviewing Tim Kurkjian while he was at Walter Johnson. And if I had told that Tim Kurkjian that you would end up being awarded at Cooperstown at the Baseball Hall of Fame with a Career Excellence Award, what would that Tim Kurkjian have said at the time?
Well, I would have said that's impossible. That could never happen. I had a little faith in myself moving along, but I was limited in a lot of ways, pretty insecure about a lot of things. But I got a lot of support from home. My oldest brother, Andy, is an electrical engineer, MIT doctorate. My father's a doctor of mathematics, MIT undergrad. And Andy was like the smartest guy I've ever met and my all-time favorite. He and my dad had a conversation at the kitchen table, like my senior year in college. And Andy asked my dad, what is Tim going to do with his life? He only loves baseball. How in the world is he going to make a career out of this? And my dad, of course, my all-time hero, just looked at my brother and said, Tim will figure it out. Don't worry. Tim will figure it out. So I guess I did. It was highly unlikely, if not impossible, that I would end up here. But if I may, Joe, the love of the game carried me. I showed up every day. I tried every day, and that can take you an awful long way. If I were covering another sport that I didn't love, this would have never worked out. But my love of the game is all I've ever had. I'm not a great writer. I look terrible on TV. I have a terrible voice. I'm about 4 feet tall, but love of the game and showing up every day and trying will take you a long way. So that's the message to anyone who doesn't think they can do it. You can, you just got to try.
Tim, I think it's safe to say that you've gotten the last laugh. Congratulations on this very, very special award, and have a great time at Cooperstown. And thank you very much for joining us on MoCo's Most Famous.
Well, thank you, Joe. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time on MoCo's Most Famous.